Kia ora, I'm Mandy Kupinga, host of Heal the Hauraki, and it's my absolute pleasure to be sharing these conversations with our leaders and experts who I found personally incredibly inspiring, and I can't wait for you to hear them too. Let's get into it. In today's conversation, I'm speaking to Nicola MacDonald, who inspires me with her passion and fire for te taio. Thank you, Nicola, for sitting down with me today to have this kōrero. It's been a few months in the making, and so I'm really grateful to have you here and to be hearing from you a little bit about you and your background. Because the funny thing is, it's so funny, I realised coming into this interview that I don't know a lot about you personally. I follow your professional work, but I don't know a lot about you personally, so I'd really like to know a little bit more, or maybe start with a little bit of your background, like where you grew up and where you're from.
Sure. Well, it's so good to see you too. I'm really excited about coming and just sharing and talking about the sort of mutual sort of aspirations that we have for the moana and really what we want to see for the future. But I guess every story has a start. I guess a little bit about myself is I'm the eldest of 6 children. I have 5 sisters and 1 brother, poor thing. He's the youngest, thoroughly henpecked. Hopefully he'll make a good husband. He's single, ladies. Get him off our hands. But I've got 6 siblings. I grew up, my early years, I grew up in the north, actually. And what I didn't know then is I actually grew up in a whānau papakainga, a whānau farm, with my grandparents and my parents. And my dad was both my parents have passed, but my father was quite a well-known singer.
Really?
Whose dad is in If You're a Māori, right? My dad was in a band. That's how we met my mum. Exactly. Exactly the same. So, and he was, he sort of grew up in a rural sort of community. So the marae was featured really heavily in his growing up years. My mother was from the Hokianga from Taranaki, and she grew up in Tamaki in Auckland and had, in a lot of ways, had quite a, I guess, more of an educated upbringing. So she was a professional classical pianist. Yeah, and she beautiful. She was taught with Sister Mary Leo from St. Mary's, and so we grew up on the whānau farm, and Mum had her big piano. My early memories of my father and my mother is my father was very much an activist, and he was all about Māori rights, Māori land rights. And he used to have a lot of meetings in the back room, and Mum would play the piano in the front room.
Really?
Yeah, and I always think that's probably why I got such a really good balance of life, because my mother really taught us a lot around literature, classical music. My dad was about whawhai tonu mātou,
yes.
And but I think because of both my parents being really committed to what they believed in, helped set the scene for me around a balance in life.
Yes, and that's so important.
Yeah, well, and I, as I say, I always remember before the Māori Land March, because on my mother's side, which is through Hokianga, our nanny Whina, she's a nanny to me. So I always remember when she was in Numeru, and we were little children playing at the Numeru Sandspit, and the actual architecture, the blueprint of the 1975 Land March was actually derived there on a piece of butcher's paper.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And there was my Uncle Witty. He was fantastic. I really loved him. My father, Nanny Whina. And we were just little kids and playing at the Sandspit. But, those leaders of that time really saw that if we don't protect our interests and rights, then there'll be nothing left.
Mm.
And so those sort of giving service and why you give service, doing the very best that you can, have come from many influences, primarily my parents, but my grandparents as well. They were very humble people. They kind of lived on the land and fished on the sea, and
yeah,
they my grandfather was in World War II. He was in the Māori battalion, but he wasn't a decorated soldier. Far from it. He served his time really well. He came back wounded, but he always inspired me to do what's right. Do what's right, and sometimes you can be influenced to follow the herd mentality because it's easier, and you're not put out from you're not said when it's time to stand the line and hold to your values. You've got to do it.
I'm really interested to hear more about those values, Nicola, because I think, like you say, there's you had a balanced upbringing with different types of just different types of life around you. But there are values, I think, that are instilled when we're young, and I'd really like to hear about those values because you live in an intergenerational whānau situation. Yeah, can you tell me about the values?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first one, and it's my universal value, and it really comes from my late mother. And she always said to me, which is why a lot of people may not know my personal background, because she always said, let your mahi do the talking for you. And what I took from that was, get on with the work. You don't have to say, and I've done this, and I am this person, and I've got this behind my name, and, te mea.
Yes.
Because your mahi, your work should actually speak as to whether it's valuable and whether it contributes to something positive. So let your mahi do the talking for you has actually really steered my professional career, my personal beliefs in everything that I do, whether it's raising my children, whether it's being on the marae or being in community groups. I love being in volunteer community groups. All of those sorts of things, then that really speaks about you're not there for the stage, and yet, goodness gracious, I'm on the TV all the time. I say that right now. I don't look for it, but I do look for whatever I do to try and be honest about it and try and do some good. So that's a really important value for me. When I think about my pūmama and my pūpapa, which are my grandparents, it's such a lovely way that Ngāti people describe grandparents. But when I think about them, my pūmama was, she wasn't a very tall woman, but boy, she was the matriarch, and she really commanded the way in which we lived our lives, and to be upfront and hold yourself with dignity and integrity, to live your truth. I guess that's really where she was. And I'm so lucky I have a matriarchal family. Actually, I tell everybody in Ngāti Wai, we're matriarchal.
Yes.
I guess that's why I relate so well to Ngāti Porou.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. True. I never thought of that. Yes, and I guess, that influence, that matriarchal influence around you, like, what did you take from that to then bring you forward as you left north and you went out into the world?
Well, I think a lot of it, when you have strong matriarchs that actually shape up, not only at a cellular level, but shape up your mind, your thinking, the way that you perceive the world. What it actually does, it's like an armor. It's like you put on a suit. And because I remember my pūmama always saying, for Māori girls, when we're born with a kite that generally has a couple of rocks in it. And we have to, tear on our back. But whether or not that kite gets filled with a whole lot of rocks where you can't carry it, depends on how you perceive yourself. So if you have good self-esteem, good self-confidence, you don't need validation from an army because you validate yourself, then your kite gets lighter.
Yes, it's self-validation.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that some more? Because I think that's really important. How do you practice that?
Well, and that, I guess how I practice it is, I have always had taken a lot of sort of joy and happiness from being out in the natural world. Although my career, I've had a checkerboard career. I've been in health, public health. I've been in education, and I've worked in tribal work as a treaty negotiator, and I've come into my own going into becoming an environmentalist and a conservationist. But when I think about it, coming into my own, it really stemmed from being influenced by my old people, because they were the ones that planted the kakano. So they really influenced me so much around, and I always believed I could do it. I never ever thought, it didn't matter what it was, and I guess that's why I've had a checkerboard career, because I've risen to the top in everything I've done, because I just believe, no, I can do this. I'll roll my sleeves up and I'll make it happen.
And having that support around you must have been really important part of that as well.
Oh, look, absolutely. Look, I come from a big whānau, and I don't know, have you ever seen that British program, Gypsies? My Big Fat Gypsy.
Oh, it's a gypsy wedding.
Yeah, Gypsy wedding. Yeah. I'm a whānau like that. My grandparents, we had we had a dairy farm, and we also had big gardens, like acres and acres of gardens, right? Watermelons, sweet corn, you name it, we grew it. Every summer, my grandfather and my grandmother would harvest everything, put everything on a trailer. And because there's mainly girls in our family, so obviously all the girls would come and we'd be selling watermelons and sweet corn, which at the time we just thought it was so much fun.
Yeah.
But that was probably our summer budget, household living expenses. But yeah, and I guess through those grandparents, we never ever relied on the government to keep us alive. We relied on ourselves under our own steam, which I think is so important.
Yes.
That actually we don't need to look for social welfare, although, I recognise that for some it's really important, and it's good that we're in a country that does provide that. But I think because of my family, we grew everything, we were self-employed, and we were very much like a gypsy family. There was hundreds of us. I thought I had 1,000 cousins.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
If there was one word you would use to describe yourself as a kid, what would that word be?
I have to tell you the truth. I can already hear my siblings going, spoil, and I say cherish. In fact, I'm hearing them. Yeah, so if I'm being completely honest, look, can I help it that I'm the firstborn on all generations? It is what it is.
I see. Yeah, right.
So,
right.
I did the coming out with the big hooped, gone with the wind dress for debutantes ball. God, it was unbelievable. My grandmother's all sewed it. It had bows everywhere. This is when Madonna was in. I wanted a dress like that. Like this was little. I had to get on the back of the Bedford truck.
I understand. I don't suppose.
No one's seen the photo of it. But if I had to think one word to sort of, I guess I'm brave. Yes. I think I'm brave because I'm not afraid of trying anything. And because I believe I can, and I really thank my parents and my grandparents for instilling that in me, that, you do your very best that you can to be of some worth. Yes. And I think when you're a woman, especially when you're a Māori woman, bravery is a quality that we probably all share when we're in those sort of roles,
have to.
There's only so many times that, you go home or you're on your own, you think and you reflect, and I always say, gosh, I hope I did right there, but as I continue on my own journey, being brave has been a really good quality for me.
Absolutely. And after school, did you do university study, or what was your kind of pathway to your career?
Well, in my family, I actually was an academic at high school, right? But because I came from quite a traditional family on my father's side, having been an academic wasn't seen as a great thing. It really wasn't the same. Well, there could be other things, my pūmama and them, they were very much of that old school, get married very young and have your children really early. Pursued would have liked to have gone to university immediately after I finished high school, but I needed to sort of help my mother with my sisters and do all of those sort of things, which was okay. I think throughout my career, I've pursued becoming more educated over the years, but I've had to do it as an adult, and it's made me appreciate the value of education. But you know what it did? It gave me a superpower because I was up against, oh man, I've got the superpower because I'm very competitive and very ambitious, you see. So when I'm going for roles, and a lot of people might have PhDs, I didn't have any of that. But what I did have is I had work ethic. I had absolute work ethic. You know, while everyone's struggling on their first board report, I've done 3. But it was because I'm a natural academic. Yeah. But I didn't get to go through the normal course that everyone else does.
Yes.
I had to do it, pick it up over time.
Yes.
And that gave me this really, I don't know, Maya attitude that I can do that.
Yeah.
You know, I've got the goods.
Exactly.
I can do it.
It sounds so familiar to me because it was the same thing. I grew up in Gisborne, and my parents were always just, if you want to do something, go for it. They never said no. They always found the money, and that gave me a sense of bravery to try things as well. My sisters would probably say that I was the spoiled one too. Cherished. Cherished. I'm going to use that from now on. Thank you. But yeah, it gave me bravery going into it, and I knew that. Even I went to university, but I knew that at the other end, I would always go for roles that were way above me because I backed myself, because I figured the same thing. I was pretty smart at school, that I could figure it out, and I learned really quickly. So I just went for jobs and roles, learned it quickly on the job, and, you know, moved forward from there. So I totally get your part as well. And when you were moving into those spaces, were there many other Māori women in those roles as you kind of went through your career?
Not really. You know, it's been interesting to me. Most of my professional mentors have been Pākehā women, and you know, they've been really different skills. I've been introduced to being very disciplined about delivery and execution on things. So, and really, and I've been so fortunate because my mentors have been people that have been at the top of their careers and have really instilled in me different qualities that I might not have had. You know, I used to be a person, I always remember, this is a mentor of mine, I hated her guts actually. Can you say you've got a mentor that you actually you challenge? Yeah, big challenge. She was challenging. Yeah. And she used to always say to me that, she goes, get to the point, Nicola. Be direct. Why? And you go, because I used to paint the kōrero, like how you have on the marae, the whai kōrero. You go all the whakapapa lines, you go round and round to get to the point, right? Which doesn't actually fit in a corporate business field. And she was like, get to the point, you know? And I used to go, you know, and I never really appreciated her mentoring until I came out of that actual workspace and I went to work in a more of a kaupapa Māori organisation, and everyone did the hikoi. They hikoi te rangi tūhaha. And I came and I heard myself going, can we get to the point? So I guess, it is about who do you take your influence from? With a lot of Māori women that I found this in a professional career, there's 2 types of Māori women that I've seen. And there's probably a whole heap of others, I just haven't seen them. But I've seen Māori women that lift your wings up and want you to fly. And I've seen Māori women that put box on your wings and want you to stay down. You're right. You know, because there's such a competitive edge, and there's it's a real knifey kind of space to be in. I've always wanted to be, and I believe I am, a Māori woman that lifts other Māori women. I want to see you succeed. I want to see women out there doing the best they can. And if that means that I might be able to influence your pathway a little bit in a good way, then I'm happy to do so. I guess that's why I'm always busy doing so many things, but I just don't see the value, although it could be a positional value, an authoritative value, to keep people down, and so you stay at the top of the food chain. But actually, I don't think emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that's a good thing to do.
I agree. I mean, that style of leadership is more, well, the style of leadership where people have to put someone down to elevate themselves,
Yeah.
I think is not based on humanitarian values that I follow myself. So, and that's one of the things that I love about you, Nicola, and that I see you doing is just bringing so many people with you on this journey, and it's so uplifting. I can see how uplifting it is. I was wondering, when it comes to community and connection, what have you learnt through your upbringing and through your mihi about community and connection?
This is another value of mine. This is another universal value. He koe te kōrero. Walk your... Don't be that person, that actually talks it up. But in reality, there's no follow through. There's no action. Because we've got a whole heap of people that are like that. And you think, what they say, you think, wow.
Yes.
And this is what I love about a Māori community and about a Kiwi community. It's like, you can't fool us, It's like, nah. And, what did they say in New Zealand? It's like 3 degrees, everybody knows one another. 6 degrees of separation, something like that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And I think that's so true.
In New Zealand.
Yeah. And so I think when I think about my communities, it's about being very honest. It's about saying, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. But most of all, if you say you're going to do something, then you've got to do it. Otherwise, with Māoris, it's to the grave. You never hear the end of it. Oh, they never did that. I mean, it could be 20 years later and it's like, well, I remember when. So it's important to not only live your truth, but walk your talk. And that's what I try to do. If I say that we're going to go and do something, then we do it. And let's not do piecemeal. Let's be big, bold, and brave. Let's do the whole lot.
Yes.
Yes. I love it.
Just going into that connection a little bit more, because it really is the heart of the community, right? Totally. When have you felt most connected to your work and to others and to kaya?
Well, there's lots of moments, I think that's the beauty about working for your iwi, working for Ngāti Manuhiri, is that there's been lots of wonderful moments that we've done where we've felt really connected to the taiao and to all of our communities. But I guess if I was to pull one out, which I think this is hilarious, and that's, everyone raves about the big muscle deployment, right? Yakatokut. All world goes, wow, that's so great. But, it didn't start out like that, because in our country, we've almost become suffocated by bureaucracy and red tape. So when we were getting ready to do the shellfish deployment, I remember saying, and I won't say his name because he always goes, God, I wish you wouldn't say it. You know who you PVK. When we were getting ready to do the deployment, and I said to him, he made a crucial mistake. Never tell a Māori woman what the real bottom line is.
Oh, okay.
So we know where we're going with this. So I said, okay, how much can we actually deploy? Like, what's the number? Yeah. And he says, maybe 50 tons. This is 50 tons of mussels. And I said, is that all? What's the highest that you could go? Oh, I think maybe 250. I said, that's the number. And he almost looked like he was going to pass out. And he goes, Nicola, you can't just jump to that big number. I said, well, why not? And he said, well, council's never going to give us the permit. I said, you leave the council to me. I said, go and get the kutai. We'll do the big. So, and he goes, well, and he goes, well, we don't have enough time. And I said, yeah, I know, we've got 6 weeks. We can do it. So within 6 weeks, I had to find over 200 tons of kutai, right? And at the same time, council was saying, you can't do it. And anyhow, he was having a hard time from council. I said, well, who are you talking to? I know the mayor. Give me the number. Like this. I don't know the mayor. But again, see, back to my superpowers. Yeah, hey, of course I can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then he said, I'm talking to this person, that person. So I bring them up and I said, look here, it's as easy as this. You hand that permit over, or else I'll see you on the 6 o'clock news. And I'll be telling the whole world how this council is destroying the golf. Honest. I'm all bluff. I'm great on a poker game. And then the next day, he rings me and he says, we've got the permit. And I said, isn't that fantastic? So we deployed 150 tons of kūtai to restore the shellfish beds on the Hauraki Gulf. We had so many of our friends and colleagues right around the Gulf that helped us do it. And what I loved the most is that this little hapu, this iwi Ngāti Manuhiri from Aotearoa, deployed the world's largest shellfish bed restoration. And I just thought, amazing. Absolutely. It was so good.
So was it the biggest shellfish restoration program at the time?
Ever. Thank you.
Oh, that's so much.
No.
Yeah.
And then we had to go and see the mayor, right? Because he was a little bit edgy about it. So I took a bucket of muddy water. Yes, I do.
Yes.
And I had some, live kūtais.
Yep.
And I said, right, and I dropped them in the bucket. And I said, by the time we finish our hui, you're going to see this little kūtai clean up the ocean that you're looking out from your 23rd floor.
Yes. Oh my God.
And I thought, please, little kūtai. Your thing, you little suckers, Please, you little suckers. Please. And I thought, you bloody scientists better not have put me wrong. By the time the meeting finished, the water was clear. The mayor was saying, wow, this is amazing. From here on in, we've never, ever had a problem with getting these permits. But what happened for us at Ngāti Manuhiri also added value for other iwi that wanted to come in and do restoration in their respective areas, which is so cool.
Oh, absolutely.
So awesome.
Yeah. And I'm really interested that the mayor saw the effect, connected with it to then make these different decisions. And connection is such a big part of how we care for and move forward with our moana and with te taio in general, right?
Totally. I mean, I always say to everyone, we're a big sea village. And when I think about the Gulf, Te Moana Nui a Toi or Te Kapa, that's what we are. We are all part of a great big sea village. Everybody has different strengths and skills, but that adds to the overall beauty of what we do. When I think about a strategy, because I'm involved in a whole lot of different types of settings, contribute to positive outcomes. But when I think about it, because everyone talks about, it's about the mauri, the life force, it's about the mana, right? And those are really important spiritual elements that are so important to flourishing, thriving space. So the strategy always has to be, it's going to sound quite strange. We ourselves as tangata need to humble ourselves because we're the ones that have caused the most damage, and really respect the natural world and do what we can. So do what we can to ensure that the natural world not only does it survive, but it thrives. And if we apply that sense of humbleness, if we're humble about the work that we do, then I think that's when you start to see the magic. Because a lot of people take, we talk about extractive behaviours, exploitive behaviours, and immediately people think, oh, well, that's sand mining, that's drilling. But we also are extractive and exploitive. But if we turn that around on ourselves and say, well, how do I practice being humaria to the natural world to actually elevate those beautiful natural taonga so that they're more important than me? They're more important than me doing my research paper that I can get published in this university and suddenly I'm a world-renowned expert. They're more important than leading existing change because I want to be on TV or want to be invited to these conferences, if we humble ourselves and say, no, I will let my mahi do the talking for me. I will walk my talk. Most of all, I will be tika and pono in everything I do. Then if that's the strategy, when you're a tika and you're living your truth, when you're a pono, when you're righteous about being honest, what it is and what it isn't, then we will see absolutely the benefits. We will see the flourishing, thriving environment, which actually is our taiao that is so full of orana and hauora, because that's what we want.
Yes, I love that, because I think it does start with us individually and how we interact and connect with the world. There seems to be a te ao Māori element to that. Can you talk about that in relation to te ao Māori and Mātauranga?
Yeah, well, a really good example is, when I talk about that strategy of being that we elevate the natural world ahead of ourselves and our own wants and desires, then the way that, well, a really good example was when Kalupa first came to Aotearoa in 2021. New Zealand froze in shock. I don't think New Zealand, and that's our Crown agencies and our communities, quite knew what to do. I think we were facing this really invasive seaweed that had taken hold of Great Barrier of Aotea and was growing at such a rate that people were alarmed, but people didn't know exactly what to do. But at the time I was in Canada, I was talking at a conference around cumulative effects, which I now understand was colonisation. So I'm there, and then I got a phone call to say that they'd found Kalupa. And
you were in Canada when you found that?
Yes.
So the moment you found out was when you were actually overseas at that conference.
That's right.
Wow. Okay.
And then I said, "Oh, what are our Crown agencies doing?" I said, "They're not sure. Everything is watching briefs, right?" Again, the superpower comes in handy. Well, we've got to do something about it. And so this is when the sea village of a connected community comes in. So I just put it out there into the universe. I said, does anybody know where these Californians are? Because apparently the Californians are the only ones in the world that's ever eradicated.
Right. So you heard about the issue and you went straight into superpower mode, right?
That's right.
And then you heard about the Californians. Tell me, because you understand the state of the Gulf and where things are at generally anyway. When you heard that there was this issue of Kalupa that we were now facing, how did you feel about that? Like, what was it? Shock? Was it like, how did you feel about it when you heard that news?
Well, I was shocked that it was here. I wondered, how did it get here? But the thing that really made my blood boil was realizing nobody was doing anything, because I'm all about the action.
Yes.
And I was, well, no, this is what my tax goes to pay my Crown agencies. And I expect you as a New Zealander, I expect government to actually get out there, to assess the situation properly and to provide us with knowledge and information on how we're going to deal with it. It's completely unacceptable to sit on our hands for an entire year fiddling, God knows what, but fiddling around and nothing's happening.
Yes.
And so I just thought, no, we can't apply the sitting at the bus stop waiting for the bus to arrive mentality. We've got to do something, and I guess that's where that, that's a wonderful quality that we as Māori have. Doesn't matter how big the world is, we're all connected in some way. And I think through establishing Whanaungatanga relationships between ourselves as a mana whenua with our Californian friends, because I flew down to meet them. They said, well, we'll see you in a couple of months. I said, I'll see you next week. And they said, when? I said, in 3 days. And I said, okay, we'll come and get you. And I said, fantastic. So that's what we did. And I think because when you're genuine, when you're tika and pono, those are those real Māori values that people can relate to, because they're universal, right? Yes. People can relate to them. Our friends from California, they became so inspired by our plight that they held an online webinar to let all our village and back home know. And it was the largest webinar that university had ever received.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, given the time difference,
Yes.
and it was so good because our whānau and community from New Zealand were feeling supported. And that's that role that we have as tangata whenua, to be good kaitiaki.
Yes.
To exercise Manaakitanga, to look after others. And so many people that had been struggling and were really worried about the seaweed, they all joined the webinar. Our friends from the university in California gave wonderful information and followed up and gave further templates and information of knowledge.
And that really shows the level of involvement in that, how many people in New Zealand were concerned and hungry for information on how we were going to move forward with kōrero. And what did you find? So what was the strategy? So bring them down and then tell me about the strategy for the Californians.
Yeah. Well, we called this strategy Te Wero Nui, the big challenge, which it really was, because it was a huge challenge because the government said they were poor as church mice, had no money. And, I just completely ignored that and said, no, I know, we can shake the money tree somewhere else. And
in the socks.
Exactly. And I was really lucky because I was so supported by Ngāti Manuhiri Settlement Trust, because they just absolutely believed in it and said, no, we've got to do something. And so one of the things that we did is we decided that we were going to host a week-long roadshow to all the sites in New Zealand and communities that had kōrero. So that was from Waitangi across to Waiheke, in Tamaki south, down to the Hauraki, down to Coromandel. And I said to our friends, I said, right, when we got home, I said, so how fast can you get out here? And they said, well, we've got July semester, which is next year. And I said, oh, and they said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, can you get here in 3 months? And they said, 3 months? And I said, yes, 3 months. I said, if not sooner, and I said, we're going to do a week long. And so they did. They made themselves available. And at the time I'd said to our Crown agencies, I said, well, it's too late. I've already booked them. They're coming. I said, I'll send you the invoice. I think they're probably hyperventilating, but and I would go, God, we were going to. And I said, I'm telling you, we've booked the flights, we've got the ACOM, I've got vans. I said, everyone in the village, we're on it, we're moving,
So the strategy was action.
Yes, absolutely. And we needed people that had been successful, because I think in New Zealand there was a feeling that we had lost and there was no hope, because we were moving very slowly with doing things. And I always say this, one thing I loved about those Californians is when I was talking to them, I said, well, how did you do it? What did you do? And, what was your thinking? They said, look, there's only one thought, Nicola. And I went, okay, well, what's that? And they said, we're there to kill it. And I went, oh my God, you're going to go down so well back home. I mean, I wasn't in Texas, but I felt like I was. When we went up to Waitangi, and the Ngāpui taumata was there on force. There was at least 200 people there. We had a full-on pōwhiri into the marae treaty grounds. It was incredible. And we had one of our great Californian friends, Eric. He went down like a treat because he was like Black Ops, and if you don't know Ngāpui, they have sort of got that vibe. They loved it. They just, he says, I've been down to the Panama Canal, Black Ops. And they'll go, far out, this guy's great. He knows what he's talking about.
That sounded like, well, that's the interesting thing, right? I want to talk a little bit about, shared knowledge and knowledge systems, because they had knowledge, international knowledge. We were looking for it. But then also within Māoridom, there was a shared knowledge system as well. Can you talk about how those two systems came together around Kalupa.
Yeah. Well, that was what was so amazing with the roadshow, because up at Ngāpui, we had a kaumātua Hone Sadler who gave a masterclass kōrero about Mātauranga Māori, Ngāpuitanga, and about the place of Ngāpui in the natural world and how they view and observe their observations, and which I think Westerners would call it citizen science. We would call it Kaitiakitanga. And our friends from California and our Pākehā New Zealanders who had never even been in a pōwhiri, let alone on the treaty grounds, I mean, it's pretty powerful. They were just over the moon. It was just incredible. It was, what I loved is Ngāpui people were giving their expression of what it means to tiaki te whenua, tiaki te moana. And I love that. The same when we went to Tamaki, and many of our mana whenua stood and gave their observations of what they see here, and whether you call it tikapa moana or te moana nui a toi, they were also giving the way in which Mātauranga Māori and their own tikanga can be applied to addressing this serious issue.
How Californian friends think of that, because, observed science is such a big part of Mātauranga. What was their reaction?
Well, one of the things that they all said, and they're highly educated, experienced people, they said publicly, even on TV, breakfast show and everything else, they said, the one thing that New Zealand has that we do not have enough of and do not have is the winning factor you have is tangata whenua. When you have your Indigenous peoples, and they said First Nations not only co-partnering but actually leading with ancient intelligences and knowledge systems, then the ability to actually tackle these big issues becomes less so.
Yes.
And that's what they really, really enjoyed, was because of how interconnected we are in the village. We work alongside each other, we ring each other, we say, what's happening here? Everyone jumped on the van. We went tiki-touring all over the place. There were a few signs that got taken down and taken out.
There must have been a wrong sign.
Wrong sign.
Yes,
exactly.
Wrong information. Yes, but that interconnectedness is so important, because as we face challenges globally with climate change, ecosystems collapse, biodiversity, the weaving and the interconnectedness of the knowledge and information that we have for pathways forward is so important. And from where I sit and from my experience, I see there's still a lot of areas that struggle to embrace the beauty and the ancient knowledge and wisdom of Te Ao Māori and Māori. And I'm really interested in what does work, like how those systems come together and are successful, because I feel like we need more that interconnectedness in our systems as we move forward. And so I really would like to hear from your experience, what are the things that have worked to bring people together, and then what are the barriers that we still face in order to make that happen or to help that happen?
I think right at the very start of any cross-cultural engagement or collaboration, it's really important that each party knows who they are. You've got to know your lane. And I think that's probably one of the beauties about being working for mana whenua, is that we have a legislative authority, but long before a legislative authority, we have an authority because we are a treaty partner. And being a treaty partner means that we understand the rights that have been afforded to tangata whenua, to hapu of this country through our treaty, and how we're protected through those articles. Now, when we understand that, that comes with a big, I will say it's a burden. It's a burden of responsibility, because we have to be accountable to understanding what are our foundations. So that's important for developing that relationship, that cross-cultural relationship. And it's also important for the group that you're engaging with to understand there are just because there's different levels of how we engage doesn't mean anyone is. It just means that this is the authority that tangata whenua come into space with, and we base that authority not only through the treaty but through our whakapapa, through our tūpuna, through the many, many atua that guide us. And at the same time, if we're dealing with community agencies, you also have an authority to live to your mission, to your purpose, to your objectives, right? But they don't necessarily have to meet on equal ground because we're a treaty partner. Our first relationship is always going to be with the Crown, but we can assist one another to achieve those mutual and common goals.
And is that's finding those mutual and common goals?
Absolutely.
And it's also about, where some organisations or people may be less educated about te ao Māori. Is it also about growing and understanding for them?
It can be. I think it. I mean, I always take the mantra really as hey, we've been here for 180 years, all right. So don't give me I don't know. We've married each other. We've got mokopunas together. We've been to at least 2 major world wars together. So it is about there's a responsibility for you and your organisation to upskill.
Yes.
You come fit for purpose. It's not my job to teach you to be a Māori because that's not what we're here for. And it's not my job to teach you to be culturally aware. You need to come into this space and do some internal work as an organisation. Say, what does it mean to us? And in terms of our relationship with tangata whenua, with Māori, what goals, what are our strategic values that guide our organisation? How receptive are we? Are we an organisation that can actually accept that there might be a different type of knowledge system that we may not be aware of, but nonetheless, it's an existing knowledge system that can benefit?
Yes.
Because sometimes people have to give up what they know in order to actually say, it's okay to that you don't know.
Yes. Yes.
And that's a hard thing because you have to build trust to do that.
Yeah, you do. And how do you build trust in the roles that you're in to, facilitate that overall purpose?
Well, that's the wonderful thing about us as Māori people. Manaakitanga. Exactly. And I always say, Manaakitanga is one of those most critical aspects to good relationships. I mean, I'm a strategic relationship broker at heart, but it's your way you manaaki others, and there's not a lot of people, even Māori, that don't do it well.
Yeah,
they only want to manaaki a certain type of person.
Because there might be people that don't understand. So, and from your experience, what is manaaki?
Well, it's on a one-to-one. It's your care for another person. That it's how you consider the needs and the values of that other person. It's the way in which you invite them into your space. At an organisational level, it's about the sharing of the tikanga values that generally are pretty universal. Generally, our values are universal in many ways, but it's how you introduce and take the time to bring people in. And I really enjoy that about overall about Māori society, the way in which we have our whai kōrero, our speeches, although, my father was a taumata pai man and God, hour after hour, and we're only going to get to the punchline. That's my metaphor. What I hate it. Get to the punchline, Dad. That the element of acknowledging people and their organisations is such a wonderful thing that Māori do. The breaking bread, having kai together, don't give me the no frills blimmin' cracker biscuit that's been in the back of the cupboard for the last 3 years. Don't be that much. We want, farm bake. So it's
respect, eh?
It's respect.
It's respect, and respect is universal, and it's also a consciousness of others outside of yourself and giving of yourself.
That's right. And, when people feel like comfortable and they feel like it's safe, actually that's when you get so much more value out of that cross collaboration, because we feel like we can do something really powerful here. And I've found that and all of the work that we do, and we do a lot of work across communities with other iwi groups as well. But when I think about our community groups, they're amazing.
Tell me about this digitised group.
So we've got a group out at Okara, which we love. And they're a community volunteering group. They don't get any money really. They pest trap, they trap rats, they go in, they do all those, hackery jobs no one else wants to do, but they love it, right? Yeah. And then they ring us up and they said, this was a couple of years ago now. Doc said we're not allowed to go in because they're going to close this. And I went, what? And they said, Doc said we're not allowed to go in. I said, right, that's it. So cool. I said, Lizzie, get all your group together. And there was like heaps of them, eh? And they were so excited because they love doing what they do. I said, right, we're going to deputise all of you to honorary kaitiakis, Whanaungatanga, manuhiri, te kōrero maki, and they go, fantastic. And they take the responsibility so seriously, and they with so much honour, and they do countless unpaid hours, and then they ring and they write reports. Doc rings up and they said, have we got that group going? I said, yeah, no, we've deputised the whole lot of them. It's weird. What? And I said, yes, and find them some money. God's sake, they can need a cup of tea or something,
Action. Awarded Environmental Hero of the Year 2024. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you tell me about what that was for and what it meant for the kaupapa?
Well, I love that it was being awarded being a hero, because a hero, you have to take risk. You have to be brave.
You do.
You have to have courage.
The hero's journey is like this.
That's right.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Climbing.
Exactly. And I've in my career, particularly in my conservation environmental career, I like doing big, large scale work, because I think if we want to turn the dial and pivot the outcomes, it's the bigger the scale, the more likely the transformation. And that's not to dissuade on everyone that's doing the work in the backyard on the small little pieces. Yeah. That's so important, because it all helps. Yeah, that's right. Yep. But I've found that the work that I can really champion and lead is those mission impossibles.
Yes. Well, when you think about it, where our trajectory, where we're headed now with the current actions we got, it doesn't feel like we're going to get the change that we need with what we're doing now. So it feels like things do need to be scaled up. We need to be doing more to change that trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that big work at scale, is that part of your hope? Is that part of your hope for the future? Like, tell me about how those projects relate to your hope for where you feel like we're headed, or where you want to see things head.
Well, I think, that's why we're so lucky, because we are in a big village. But for a very, very long time, decades actually, the village has been working in isolation and in silos, because everyone has been extractive.
Yes.
Right? So when we start connecting everyone like on a net, connect all the baubles up so that we're all part of one system.
Yeah.
The work I do contributes to the work you do. And that's about sharing and talking. That's about building the Whanaungatanga and the concept that we actually are a sea village. We are a whānau. And so, and if we think of each other, I mean, God, we're going to have squabbles. We're siblings. Of course. Whānau. But if we think about the way in which our mahi contributes to the overall outcome, then the hope for te moana nui a toi for tikapa moana becomes more within our grasp, rather than being so distant and so far away, and I think that's it. Everybody has got to put skin in the game, which I think they do. But it's about how do we connect to one another so we can all help get the big outcomes.
do you ever lose hope? Or what do you do when you must have down days? We're all human. What do you do to lift yourself when you have those days where it's difficult?
Like that captain that goes, can you recon that Jack Sparrow? Yes, exactly. I'm Captain Jack, Lady Sparrow. The more, the greater the seas, the storms, I love it.
Wow.
The more pressure, the more that it's become so impossible, and people say it'll never happen. You know, that's your superpower. That's my fiddle. I'm into it. I'm like, yes. And everyone always goes, God, fiddle's coming. Because I go into the workplace, I say, guys, we need to do this. And everyone's going, oh, God. But I always say to them, don't worry, until it all comes, everything will smooth out again.
Oh, that's fascinating that's your zone.
That's my zone. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, not many people do, but yeah, the more interchangeable, hardship, challenging, give it to me. A minute, I'll go for it.
And just on that, I just want to talk quickly about being in the spaces, the bureaucratic spaces or the organisational spaces and the level that you operate at. Oh, sounds safe. Those systems, and how do you stay so happy and balanced and in systems that can seem from the outside to be quite chaotic?
That's a really good, if I can share anything I've always felt you've got to be grounded, right? You've got to be able to, I speak my truth because I actually physically go out and do it. A lot of people can sit on the boardroom table, and I chair a lot of these tables, and they might have been, the last time they got their feet wet could have been a decade ago.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I do.
Yes. So when you're, and people say, oh, you shouldn't have to do that work anymore, but that's the work I love. I absolutely love being, helping in a kaimahi. And I humble myself. Yes, I'm chairing these groups, but I always think of myself as a kaimahi, as a kaitiaki. Now, if I'm going to be authentic about being that kaimahi, being that kaitiaki, it actually means I've got to go and do that mahi. Now, I'm not in it every day, but I don't say I'm not ever going to do it.
Yeah. And is that your way of staying connected as well?
You've got to stay connected. You've got to be able to, if I'm going to say to any agency or community, nah, you haven't done that right, well, I need to speak with a bit of truth and authority.
And do you find that some decision makers in these spaces are maybe not connected at that grassroots, at that grounding level? And is that why some of these decisions get made that don't make sense to us, everyday people?
Yeah, because, maybe I'm a jack of all trades. Could be. I think sometimes people can hone in and become a specialised person. But in your specialisation, you can lose the ability to stretch this way, laterally, because you become very narrow and specialised. And that's what can sometimes happen. So it's important to have your operational connectivity, because that's what keeps it truth at place.
Yes.
And everyone loves using that word these days, place. Kia ora, into my place. I don't know.
And what about your hope for the future of Te Kapa Moana Te Moana Nui Atoe? What's your vision? What's your hope for our future?
Well, I think some of the biggest things that we need to really look at is that there's so many beautiful taonga associated with this moana space, but it is in trouble. Our fish stocks are in trouble. Our marine environments are in trouble, and our seabirds are in trouble, right? So really, I think we have to be very bold, very brave. We have to draw lines in the sand. Now, that may not fit with our current settings, but that doesn't mean to say, just because it doesn't fit this current setting, that we stop striving for the impossible. Always go for the impossible, because if we settle for mediocre, then we've got what we've got. We've got decline, depravity, we've got poverty, right? And we can't afford to do that, because we are humble in our place in that world. We're not seeing ourselves that we are the tuakana here. Absolutely not. We are the taina to the natural world. And if we think like that, then actually the hope for the Hauraki Gulf becomes far more realised than what it ever will be.
What does being a good ancestor look like to you, Nicola?
Oh, boy, that's a really good question. I really like that question. Well, I'm really lucky because I have a big blended family. There's 7 in our family, and we have 7 mokopuna. And, and my mokopuna call me pūmama. Being a pūmama, the centre of, means that I have a responsibility to be tika and pono, to show aroha, to demonstrate aroha, to be kind and caring and manaaki. So when I think about being a tūpuna, then I would hope that my future generations would say, gee, I'm really proud that she's my tūpuna, that she was my pūmama, that she lived her life being tika and pono and tried to do good things. Don't be that paru tūpuna. There's a thing I know. Don't be that. Don't be that tūpuna. And I think that's what I'd love to, because we all have tūpuna that in our whakapapa that we can connect to, and we feel really proud, and we have to explore, why am I proud about that? So there's qualities there.
Yes. And what would you say to other people to bring them into this kaupapa, to bring people back into connection for the good of our people themselves, for our community, and for te kaiao?
Well, I mean, we've never had an issue with people that don't want to be in the waka, actually. And I think because the waka actually benefits everyone, whether you're tangata whenua, tangata tiriti, or your new whānau coming to Aotearoa, we all love how beautiful our ocean space is. And so I always say, you come, e noho, pick up the hoi, try and, paddle in unison. Don't be that one that's going to spin us around and around. But, learn and be with us in the spaces that we need to be. Because we have a lot of people that really whati and takahi over the ocean space. They take more than what they need. Sometimes they take things they shouldn't take. Sometimes they leave their rubbish on it. They do all these sort of behaviours. When I come across things like that, it's about, being straight and saying, don't whati the taiao like this. You're better than that. Take your rubbish home with you.
And to me, that speaks to love and care. Like we talk about, and I'm, fishers. I love the ocean. I love fishing. But that love, in my experience and from what I've witnessed, can be, I love it because I get this. I love getting this and I love getting this. But then when you say, what do you do to show you care? How do you put back to the moana? What's your action? It's a different concept. I might pick up rubbish every now. They kind of, people think differently. It's like, if you love something, you care for it by loving it with your actions.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, and this is one of the things that this project this project to put out into the world, is have a think about what you can do in your actions to show that love for our moana and yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. So
is there anything else that you want to, is there any other wisdom imparting? Like, can we just keep talking for another hour?
I think I've revealed a few things about myself. But no, it's been really great. It's been a lovely talk, actually. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, Nicola. I mean, like I say, like I watched the mahi that you do, and I think it's absolute fire. I'm so inspired and impassioned by the work you do, but also how you bring everyone on the journey with you. And so I just want to thank you so much for being part of this project, for the support that you and Ngāti Manuhiri Settlement Trust have given for this project. And I'm just so thrilled to put your story out into the world.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Kia ora.
Thanks so much for listening. And if you're keen to find out more, head on over to healthehauraki.com. There's so much more we have to share.